Calgary is on the front lines of an infrastructure crisis, and I just can't sugarcoat that.
It basically cut our business off right at the knees. Will I have a job then in 5 years, or are they just going to keep reducing the restrictions and to the point where I can't do a job?
Many sleepless nights. Employees are suffering. Owners are suffering. Everyone's suffering in the industry. So yeah, we just want to get back to work. And even if we're in stage 1, it's not good enough. We need to remove all the outdoor water restrictions.
Sydney Fazard for Rebel News to bring you an update on Calgary's water lockdowns, which began after a critical feeder main suddenly burst on June 5th this year. It's been over 6 weeks since this disaster began, but the real crisis wasn't buried underground. It's in City Hall and continues to this day. When this water main burst, Mayor Jyoti Gondek implemented mandatory water use restrictions. First stage 4, then stage 3, both of which made it illegal to use water for outdoor purposes for residents and businesses alike.
With the stage 4 water restrictions that are now in place, there is no outdoor water use.
Thousands of locals have been prevented from working during this time, notably the irrigation industry, whose members and associates have endured drastic cuts to their revenue, all while the city was allowing themselves exemptions to their own mandates.
Allowances have been made to have outdoor pools and spray parks up and running as soon as possible.
Today, the city implemented new restrictions in the form of mandatory water use schedules. They call it stage 2, with stage 1 suspected early next week.
In the middle of this intense heat wave, we are now moving to level 2 water restrictions.
A drop in the bucket when it comes to returning to normal operations. For businesses struggling to survive and residents desperate to keep their gardens alive, these new measures are not only poorly thought out, they're also a drought in the making, with many fearing that these restrictions designed for a drought but implemented over the city's negligent infrastructure maintenance may become a permanent feature in Calgary, as repairs for the water system are now expected to take years. That's why today I spoke with members of the irrigation community at the Canadian chapter of the Irrigation Association's annual Smart Irrigation Month barbecue to hear about their hardships firsthand and whether they'll be able to even survive the mayor's continued infrastructure drought. But before we get to today, for more on this story, I strongly encourage you to check out firegondeg.com to see my latest reports on this crisis. And while you're there, please consider signing the petition to send a message calling for Mayor Jyoti Gondek to resign so we can find a mayor capable of maintaining a city instead of focusing on vanity projects and woke political agendas. Go to firegondek.com.
Providing safe water supply to Calgarians is one of the absolute core jobs of City Council and administration. And for the last several weeks, we have faced massive challenges.
How have the past 6 weeks affected you or affected business in relation to stage 4 and stage 3, and how will you recover from these losses?
Business is down by about 50%, so we'll have to play catch up. Hopefully now that we're open back for business, it'll be a hard thing to do though.
We've seen a drop in sales considerably, anywhere from 15 to 20%. Throughout this period. We've also seen many of our contractors who buy supplies from us coming through the door extremely frustrated that they can't do their jobs, they can't get paid. So a lot of frustration and a lot of lost money.
It's obviously been a very difficult time for, not only just us, all of our other irrigation companies, distributors, landscapers, everybody within the industry's really struggled.
So much of that business is going to be lost throughout the season. So 4 weeks, or basically 4 weeks ago when the feeder main broke, and then we had the restrictions implemented as well, it basically cut our business off right at the knees. We weren't able to go out and actually do any startups, any maintenance, any repairs, let alone just on the employees and everything else for the industry for us. Because we hire seasonal guys, summer, university. This is where they make their money to go to school and stuff like that.
Why is it important for irrigation operations to return to normal?
All you got to do is drive around, walk around the community. You can see how much the plant material is struggling. Plant material pulls out carbon from the air. It cools the air. It acts like it's a air conditioner outside. And when it's plus 34 outside, people need spaces where they can relax and get away from the heat. So as far as mental health goes, it has impacts on that. So I'd say it's pretty important. One of my favorite things about the city is how green it is, how many trees there are, and I hate to see that struggle.
Right now we've had tons of moisture this spring, so there was lots of moisture in the ground earlier in the season. Right now, over the last week and the coming weeks, there's not enough moisture in the ground, so that's going to start causing some problem for the landscapes, some trees that decline, shrubs, that sort of thing. I'd like to see everything sort of have enough water to make it through the summer months. Typically with irrigation, you only need it in July and August, so this is a very crucial time for us to get some water down to those plants so they can make it through the winter.
Here you got the city planning department saying that you have to allocate so much green space. Oh, and that green space has to be irrigated. Oh, but we're not going to let you irrigate because of all the restrictions and everything else. So you got the one hand saying, okay, we want landscaping and everything that goes with it, but we're not going to give you the tools to be able to maintain it.
I mean, obviously we're happy to see it progressing in the right direction that we want it to. Definitely, we live in a province where if you take a plant and stick it in the ground and you don't properly irrigate it or water it, it's not going to survive.
Sydney Vizard with Rebel News. Businesses have been begging for an end to Stage 4 restrictions with thousands of people's employment on the line. How much of a factor was that in lifting Stage 4 to move to Stage 3?
Throughout this process, we have been very concerned about making sure that residents and businesses can get a return to the water system that they are accustomed to. That's why as soon as we were able to repair the pipes and as soon as we were able to monitor enough progress, we eased the indoor reductions that we had asked people and businesses to take. Now, as we move through the stages of outdoor restrictions, we are absolutely focused on making sure that people's livelihoods are maintained. That's why opening outdoor pools and splash parks and ensuring that the construction industry can keep moving forward were so important as part of our considerations. But the primary thing that we have to look at is making sure that the water supply is safe and it is strong enough for a return to full use.
Here are some details on what outdoor water use is permitted at Stage 2. We know many of you are anxious to water your lawns, particularly given the heat that we're experiencing right now. All Calgarians, residents, and businesses can now use a sprinkler, soaker hose, or in-ground sprinkling system for up to 1 hour a week on specific days. This sprinkler schedule is determined by address. Houses that have even numbers will use one schedule, and houses with odd numbers will use another. If all continues to go well, we may be able to move to Stage 1 outdoor water restrictions on Monday.
Is this enough for you, these water schedules? Is it fair, do you think? And do you think that this will last throughout summer?
I do think it's going to last throughout summer. I'm happy to hear that they're considering going to Stage 1. My expectation was that we're going to be at Stage 2 for most of the season. But yeah, it's very restrictive. As far as what the plant material needs, it's just not enough, especially when there's no rainfall and the forecast is plus 35. Credit could be given for those people who have invested in efficient technologies. Oftentimes those systems need to run longer, to create a precipitation rate, but they are more efficient. So, a blanket restriction is a difficult one for us to work with. It's just not enough time for anybody who's got a bigger system.
You go to smart technology now, and you can irrigate that whole property in half the time and then probably reduce the water that's being used. So, I think that promoting efficient sprinkler systems and correct equipment is extremely important. We sell products that are smart, that adjust your schedules daily based on, the plant material, sun exposure, amount of rain that's come, its root zone, so that you can properly irrigate it, you don't overwater it.
My biggest positive was that they allowed now us to be able to test and do the maintenance on the systems, because like I say, even though they're allowing now 1 hour a week, and to be honest, we have systems out there where we're talking one point of connection, 26 zones, 30 zones. So when you're talking an hour, you're running the zones for what, 2 minutes a week? So then you got to really pick and choose. Okay, I'm just going to do the flowers, or I'm just going to do, certain areas, because there's just no way that you can water effectively in that time frame. So, and then by them going to a Stage 1 to 2 hours, it helps, but still it really does regulate on the larger properties on how much it can actually maintain a green, healthy environment. I'm hoping they'll reduce and just take all the restrictions off. But then by that time, if the weather stays like this and the river goes down, then all of a sudden then they can cry drought conditions. And so there's always a reason. I'll be amazed actually if they get off the level 1 restrictions for the rest of the year and don't just implement that right through.
Once we hit stage 1 and 2 of water restrictions, you'll likely be implementing the residential water use schedules. Will these be made permanent for the remainder of summer?
What we are doing right now is addressing a crisis that we had. We needed to restore water service after we had a major feeder main break on June the 5th. We were able to repair that. We found 5 more hotspots that we needed to repair. And as quickly as we were able to, we brought the system back up to a capacity where we could ease off of reductions as well as restrictions. And we will continue to ease off of those restrictions that are in place to deal with this emergency.
Do you think that the mayor has handled herself appropriately during this crisis, and how come?
Our industry's been targeted specifically, and it would have been nice to have some kind of an exemption for testing so that we could continue doing our work. We always work our hardest to ensure that we run things as efficiently as possible. I think that there was a lack of understanding of our industry and how it operates and how we can be a tool to increase water efficiency. It's been difficult, in a sense where there's just no plan for us and just no light at the end of the tunnel. We're just thankful that we're going to be able to get back to work here.
A lot of the blame has been put on our green industry, and it's tough to see as kids' pools can get filled, car washes can still operate, and yet plant material can't be irrigated. We just need to be maybe monitoring the infrastructure a little tighter and possibly putting more money towards that versus other things.
Many sleepless nights, employees are suffering, owners are suffering, everyone's suffering in the industry. So yeah, we just want to get back to work. And even if we're in stage 1, it's not good enough. We need to remove all the outdoor water restrictions so that way we can get the plants healthy and everything ready for winter.
I don't think that this was top of mind of anybody until all of a sudden we have the feeder break, kind of thing. She handled it, in my opinion, poorly to start with, and then she's tried to make amends by having the daily updates and everything else. And I thought it was kind of funny, and this is just my own opinion, but I knew the Stampede economically is a huge boost for Calgary. And so I could just see where all of a sudden the indoor restrictions were lifted. We got to go through with this Stampede, everything was fine. And then as soon as the Stampede was finished and that came off without a hitch, then, okay, let's look at the other industries pulling in the outdoor watering restrictions. Let's pull them off and start on that side. So I understand it from a business point, like a huge boom to the city, and I understand why they wanted to make sure that part went through. But our industry really suffered on this. So my concern still is that they've done this blanket rezoning on everything. So basically you've gone to where a house, now you're supplying 3 houses, 3 families getting the water instead of 1. They've done that throughout the city. So if the demand on the system wasn't able to handle our industry, then by the time that all this goes through, all the building happens, what's going to happen to our infrastructure then? The demand is going to exceed what we're capable of then, let alone now. But there is industries like ours that are being directly affected by these restrictions and the lack of the infrastructure in place. Because will I have a job then in 5 years, or are they just going to keep reducing the restrictions and to the point where I can't do a job?
Calgary can't afford a mayor who actively neglects our infrastructure so she can focus on personal vanity projects. A mayor who cried drought while destroying the very industry leading the way in drought resilience. A mayor who breaks her own rules so the city doesn't have to adhere to maintaining what they forced others to uphold. Sign the petition at firegondek.com, stand for fair governance, and send a message that this is unacceptable behavior from elected officials. Instead of celebrating a move to stage 2 restrictions, the city needs to focus on ending this crisis they created and take accountability for their ineptitude. For Rebel News, I'm Sidney Fizard. It's time to hold them accountable. The city and Mayor Gondek need to know that what they're doing is not only inappropriate, everyone sees what they're doing. Everyone has had enough of this. It's time to end the restrictions. It's time to admit to your own failures and your neglect of our critical infrastructure. Firegondek.com, sign the petition.